Foundation Season 3 Finale Episode 10 Recap. Is a mule dead? In the 9th episode of Foundation Season 3, Day survived Sunmaster's death sentence because of Songbird and Oceanglass intervention. But instead of running away to avoid getting lynched by the inheritance, he confronted Sunmaster, killed him, took the robot head off his staff with the intention of reuniting with Demerzel, and then began making his way back to the Imperial Palace, probably on foot. His brother, Dusk, in the meantime, went completely berserk as he unleashes Navacula upon Cloud, Dominion, Clarion, and the Maiden just because their representatives had asked him to hand over Trantor to the Mule to get him to stop his reign of terror. As everybody was recovering from the shock of this incident, Demerzel went to the Imperial Library for a chat with Colley regarding what stance he should take in the battle between the Mule and the Second Foundation. Colley gave her a non-answer as she suggested to Demerzel that she avoid making any concrete decisions until she was entirely sure who would be more beneficial for the survival of the Empire, the Mule or Gal. Speaking of Gal, she met with Digital Selden and promised to give him a physical body if he helped her and her motley crew invade the space station that the Mule will hold up in. How were things wrapped up in the finale of the show? Let's find out. On New Terminus, Gal, Pritchard, Torin, Leda, Zira, Magnifico, and Ebling prepared to get transported into the Mule's newly acquired space station with the help of Digital Selden. Torin says that, while killing the Mule is of utmost importance, saving Beta is also necessary. Pritchard simply says that they will if they can, because he doesn't want to make any promises that he can't keep. After Pritchard and Gal are done sharing their final kiss, Digital Selden takes everyone, including the Vault, into the stratosphere to infiltrate the space station. Once they are in, Digital Selden distract the guards, while the rest make their way to Inbo's office, because that's where the Mule is. Pritchard separates from the group, though, to look for Beta and promises to rendezvous with the rest of them once his objective has been fulfilled. Speaking of Beta, she and Dawn are woken up by the sound of the alarms going off. Beta tries to open the doors that are keeping them confined to those chambers, and it works. So, she tries to escape from there along with Dawn. But Dawn refuses to leave, because his legs don't work like they used to before, and he doesn't want to be a burden on Beta and slow her down. Therefore, they choose to part ways, with Beta making her way to Gal and her crew, while Dawn hangs back in the recovery room. Seth spots Beta running through the corridors of the space station and takes aim, but Pritchard incapacitates her to save Beta from getting hurt. He informs Beta that Torin is alive and promises that he will help her get to the hangar from where Digital Selden will fly her back to New Terminus, but he says that he can't come with her because his mission is still to kill the Mule. As soon as he says that, the Mule attacks Pritchard's mind and incapacitates him. Gal and her crew make their way to Inbo's chamber to catch the Mule, who senses their movement and tells Skirlet to hide. Leda dies as soon as he comes near the Mule, prompting the rest to open fire at him, and it doesn't take long for the Mule to take all of them down. The Mule then seemingly gets into Gal's mind and forces her to kill herself. Obviously, she has trained her whole life for this confrontation, and hence, she manages to one-up the Mule and compel him to kill himself. The first thing she does after accomplishing this task is put Skirlet to sleep, because she knows how traumatizing all of this must be for her. Ebling and Magnifico come out of hiding, while Torin and Zira get their bearings back, hoping to celebrate this victory. However, that's when Gal's mind is invaded by the real Mule, which is Beta. Yes, the showrunners had laid the ground for this twist that the Mule that we have been following so far isn't the real Mule. It's someone else. Book readers assume that it's Magnifico who is actually pulling the strings, and Pilu as Beak's character is merely the frontman, and maybe also his brother. I suppose the showrunners knew that that's something that viewers would be anticipating. Hence, they have changed things up pretty dramatically to make Beta the Mule. What about the vision of the Mule's time in Rossum that we saw, where it was clearly a boy? Yeah, that has been manipulated to convince us Beak's character that he is a Mule so that he can confidently carry out Beta's orders, while Beta herself remained in the shadows and pulled the strings. Torin is understandably shocked by this turn of events, but Beta puts him to sleep, promising to explain everything to him when the time is right. Pritchard seems to have been converted by Beta, or maybe he had been converted to that party in Calgan, and the seed that was planted then has been activated now, and he advises Gal to just let Beta take over her mind. When Gal resists, Pritchard straight up shoots her in the stomach, thereby seemingly making her susceptible to Beta's mind virus about defeating the Empire. However, Beta makes a fatal mistake when she tells Magnifico to play the Visa Sona, because the musical instrument in Magnifico's mind had been tampered with by Gal. So, instead of amplifying Beta's powers of manipulation, the balladier's music amplifies Gal's powers, which gives her the upper hand in this battle of telepathy. Before Beta can figure out a way to outmaneuver Gal's tricks and get Magnifico to stop playing the Visa Sona, Gal goes full Tom Cruise to escape from the space station. Gal orders Razik to re-enter New Terminus Stratosphere. She breaks off the door of a metal container, jumps through the window of the space station, and then cloud surfs into the ship being piloted by Razik. Yeah, it is pretty preposterous, but this is a show with robots, superpowers, and interstellar travel, so this is fine. As Razik prepares to jump into hyperspace, Digital Selden projects himself into the ship and asks what'll happen to him, and the promise that Gal made to him about giving him a physical body by consulting with a real Selden. That's when Gal reveals something that we all knew already. Selden is dead, and she lied to Digital Selden to get into that space station. Now that that's done, she is okay with abandoning Digital Selden in his vault, which he considers to be his tomb. As the gravity of Gal's betrayal sets in, Razik takes the ship into hyperspace, leaving Digital Selden to chart the next chapter of his life with Beta, Torin, Magnifico, Ebling, Pritcha, Zira, and the rest of New Terminus. On Trantor, Dusk prepares for his ascension ceremony, and as he puts on his final set of robes, he becomes Brother Darkness. Zagreus is supposed to walk him to the chamber where the Kleon's nanits are removed before their death. But Darkness decides to go there unsupervised, because he plans to skip the whole process. Why? Because he wants to bring an end to the Kleonic dynasty. While Darkness does all that, Day reaches Demerzel's bedroom and presents a brazen head to her. He reminds her about what she said regarding the topic of clasping, how she thought that communicating with another robot would help her attain freedom, and points out the fact that now she has a robot, well, just its head, to do exactly that. She tries to avoid the proposal by claiming that the brazen head is defunct, which is obviously not true because we have all seen it speak. And Demerzel can probably feel that there's life in the robot head too. When Day insists that Demerzel at least try and class with it, she lashes out by saying that she can't erase Kleon 1's programming and become free because that would be treason. Day takes a step back and asks how he can prove that the brazen head isn't just a hunk of metal, that it still has life in it. Without uttering any words, Demerzel points at her makeup cabinet, and Day goes and puts the brazen head on the pedestal where Demerzel usually keeps her head while fixing parts of her neck. Then, with that makeup tool that he had stolen from Demerzel, in order to gain the trust of the inheritors, he triggers a part of the brazen head so as to get it to speak. However, Darkness' demonic activities, which involve destroying every single clone of the Kleons, compel Demerzel to rush to the clone tanks, and Day goes after her, leaving the brazen head unguarded. En route to the clone tanks, Demerzel comes across Quent, who wants to know what's going on. Demerzel tells her to leave and go to the Imperial Library, find the head librarian, and deliver a triangular book, which is Colley's 9th proof of folding. Quent understandably doesn't get what Demerzel is trying to say, but she urges her to follow her instructions anyway. Demerzel and Day reach the clone tanks, and upon witnessing the carnage that's being caused by Darkness, think that all has been lost. However, when Demerzel notices that the tank that had a baby Kleon in it has been left unharmed, she thinks that there's still some hope left. Darkness rushes to the Ascension chamber with the infant, knowing full well that Demerzel is coming after him. He puts the baby on the dais that can disintegrate anything and gives Demerzel a choice. Either she can die protecting the baby, or she can let the baby die and apprehend Darkness. Day arrives and proposes a third option. He will delay Darkness' ascension and address whatever complaints he has. Darkness says that it's too late and activates a disintegration device, which prompts Demerzel to cover the kid and die along with it. Couldn't Demerzel have pushed the baby aside before being caught by the disintegration ray? Her sacrifice would have still been impactful, but the way this scene plays out makes it look like she died for nothing. I don't know if this scene is realistic or not, because I'm not looking for realism in a show about robots, superpowers, and interstellar traveling. I'm just saying that, based on what we have seen so far, I think Demerzel could have saved the baby and then died. Or maybe I am just miffed at the fact that Demerzel has been killed off right when she was starting to gain sentience and yearn for freedom. Darkness takes a prime radiant that was lodged in Demerzel's chest and walks away from the scene of the crime, while Day sits there in shock, because everything he did in Mycogen has amounted to nothing. Shock then turns to rage, and he goes after Darkness to punch the hell out of him. Darkness still has his nanits in him, so Day's punches don't affect him in the least bit. Since Day had his nanits removed before heading to the Mycogen district, when Darkness shoots him in the stomach, he bleeds to death. When Zagreus arrives at the palace room, he is at a loss for words. Darkness tells him to have 2 out of the 3 thrones, as well as Day's body, removed, and Zagreus scampers off to carry out the orders before Darkness loses his cool again. At the end of Foundation Season 3, Episode 10, Quent arrives at the Imperial Library to return Collie's 9th proof of folding, and the librarian takes her to Preem, who is waiting there for her with the Prime Radiant in his hands, probably to use a book and a device to transport the second Foundation into Tranta's library. Back in Demerzel's room, the Brazen Head becomes activated and commences the clasping process. This transmission is received by the real Collie and her robot partner, who are apparently on a lunar base on the moon. Yes, the same moon that revolves around Earth. Collie wonders why someone wants her to get embroiled in the ongoing struggle between the Empire, the Second Foundation, and the Mule. Whether or not she will actually respond to this request is not revealed this season.